great God. Thank you for the plan that you've laid out for us, the opportunities, and even the challenges, Lord, so we can grow stronger. Give us the courage and the strength and the wisdom to recognize your will and to follow it as Christians and as we move forward during these turbulent times. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for doing that. So, just for those in the audience that aren't aware of who Doug is, so Douglas V. Gibbs is a renowned constitutionalist, AM radio host, instructor of the U.S. Constitution, author, and public speaker. He is president of the Constitution Association, fellow of the American Freedom Alliance, and has appeared as a guest on television and radio. Doug is an award-winning blogger and freelance newspaper columnist whose articles appear in both print and online. Doug is married and is a father of 2 and has 7 grandchildren. Doug is a proud United States Navy veteran. Welcome, Doug. So excited for you to be here. It's just been interesting. I actually met you through my mentor, who was a good friend of ours, Deacon Philip Brooks. And he's no longer with us, but I just remember he would always be talking about Kamala and, just her ineligibility and she's not, a valid, she could not have run for president, so she shouldn't be in the position that she's in. So I feel like I wish he was still here because I'd love to know what he was thinking about this. But I would love for you to tell our audience, kind of break that down and kind of unpack that for us so that people can understand what that means, because a lot of people kind of want to fight against it, but I don't think that they fully are equipped with the knowledge that they should be. And I feel like you could provide that for us.
All right, very good. Well, first of all, let me say this, that on December 7th, 2020, I was a part of a lawsuit that was launched against Kamala Harris for not being eligible for office. The last sentence of the 12th Amendment states that the vice president must also be eligible for the presidency in order to be vice president. So natural born citizen applies to the president and the vice president. No other office. The term natural born citizen in the Constitution doesn't apply to any other office holder. Citizen does for Senate and House of Representatives, but the term natural born citizen does not. Natural born citizen appears in Article 2, where it says that the president needs to be a natural born citizen to be eligible, or a citizen at the time of the adoption of the Constitution. The reason why it says that is because at the time the country was only 11 years old, became a country in 1776. So the oldest natural born citizen was 11. So it gave the ability of citizens to be presidents until that time had passed. And I want to say, I can't remember which one. I think was it Buchanan? I think was our last not natural born citizen, something like that. It was one of them, but right around that time. But anyway, now, so what does natural born citizen mean? Why is that language there? And that's the key here. And this goes back to the attitude of the founders at the time. One of the things that they were worried about was foreign influence. They had created something that was unlike anything in history, and the old world hated it. It did away with aristocracy. It did away with mercantilism, where government and companies, intermingled and colluded together. It did away with nobility. It did away with other mechanisms of tyranny. And so, and the other countries in the old world didn't like it because they're afraid if it succeeded, their people would want that, and that'd be a loss of power. So they wanted to stamp out what America stood for. So there was a concern by the early Americans that foreign influence could insert into our government and change it in ways that was never intended. They wanted to stick with their original system. They also knew that was a reality because of the American Revolution itself. During the war, a third of the Americans supported the effort. About a third were ambiguous. They didn't care, or ambivalent, should I say. They didn't care if which way it went. As long as they got to have their farm or whatever. And then there was about a third. They were Tories who said, nah, we need to stay under the umbrella of the British Empire. Those Tories actually fought in the war side by side with British troops. So if ever there was a civil war in America, that was it. And so and Tories tended to have one parent that was still a citizen or a British subject, citizen of Britain. And so one of the ways to make sure that those type of people who wanted to usurp our system and damage our system from within, to sabotage it, one way to keep them out would be to make the presidency not allow them to have that position, hence natural born citizen. Now, the definition, and we'll get into what the arguments are in a minute. The definition is both parents are citizens at the time of the birth of the person who is going to be president. I didn't necessarily say born citizens, just as long as they're citizens. They could be naturalized citizens. My wife was born in Mexico, naturalized in 2007. Our kids were born before she naturalized, so they only had one citizen parent at the time of the birth, so they're not eligible for president. Now, if we had a child now, not that we would at this time in our lives, but if we did, now that she's a citizen, that child would be eligible. So it doesn't necessarily mean born citizen, just as long as both parents were citizens at the time of the birth. How do we know that's the definition? Doesn't say in the Constitution. Right. And a lot of people say, well, if you're born on American soil, that takes care of it. That's the birthright citizenship argument. I can't count how many times I say she's not eligible. And they say, well, was she born in the United States?
Yes. Same here.
I hear it all the time because it's been pounded in our skull for over 100 years. If you're born on American soil, you're automatically a citizen. You're automatically a natural born citizen. Well, first of all, we know citizen and natural born citizen aren't the same thing. You can't, it doesn't apply to both because going back to Article 2, which I quoted earlier, I'm going to actually pull it out so I can look at it so I can read it word for word so I can make sure that the language is as clear as possible here. No person except a natural born citizen or, that word or is interesting. It's not and, it's or. In other words, there's another possibility, or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of the Constitution. Once again, at the time, there was nobody old enough that was a natural born citizen. But what's key here is this differentiating between the two.
Right.
If natural born citizen and citizen were the same thing, they wouldn't have needed to done this.
Right.
Natural born citizen or a citizen of the United States. They are two different, distinct things. A natural born citizen is basically a citizen, but a little bit step up. There's a little bit more to it. And so first of all, we know that just being born on American soil doesn't satisfy both. They're different things, first of all. Second of all, we know that they had resources at the time to help us determine what that definition is. Just like today, if you were using if someone said a term to you, you weren't sure what it meant, you would look it up in a dictionary or you would get on your computer or whatever, but you would find something to define that for you that is designed, a resource that's designed to do that for you. Back then, they had resources like that as well. One of them was called Vattel's Law of Nations. And this was a legal resource that was basically in the modern world, basically Europe and their colonies. It was used. 1758 was when it was written. In 1760, the English translation came out. So originally it was in French. That document was basically filled with a definition of legal terms that were used by all the countries in the modern world. And it was important to the Founding Fathers. We know it was important to them because 3 copies of that book was on the floor during the Constitutional Convention.
Right.
So that tells you right there, it's pretty important if they have 3 copies. One of them in French, 2 of them in English. They all understood how to read and write French and all that. So the French, was just, if there's a problem with English translation, well, then we'll check the French. Right. Basically, we know for sure that 2 were on the floor because in his autobiography, Benjamin Franklin wrote such that he took those 2 copies. The third one, in some letters, it is believed based on those letters, George Washington brought another copy in English. So we have 3 copies on the floor. It's important to them. And if you read Vattel's Law of Nations, when it gets to the part of natural born citizens, and back then they went back and forth, almost used synonymously, native born and natural born. Today we've kind of separated the two, and it says that a person is a natural born citizen if born of citizen parents, plural. So that means both mom and dad. Right. So now we get into but Doug born on American soil. Well, let's now real quick examine. And I know I just took off with this, but sometimes hosts like that. You don't have to do any work, right?
I love it you're the one I want to share all of it. I don't need to say nothing. Yeah.
Well, the argument then is, born on American soil. It says so in American law. Does it? There is no law on the books that says if you're born in American soil, you're automatically a citizen. It's
Right.
based on a case, 1898, Wong Kim Ark versus the United States. Wong Kim Ark was a Chinese American soil born Chinese American. His parents had immigrated here from China. At the time, the immigration laws disallowed the Chinese from becoming citizens. So his parents did the next best thing. They became permanent residents. Green card that's what we call it today. All right. So they became green card holders, basically permanent residents. Best they could do, can't become citizens. And then they had Wong Kim Ark on American soil. And when they wound up being deported, and the Wong Kim Ark was to be deported with them. And he says, "Well, wait a second. I'm an American citizen. I was born here. You can't deport me." And the case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And the United States Supreme Court found that, yes, he could not be deported. He's an American citizen, partly because he was born on American soil. That's where the argument stops. Everybody says, see, born on American soil, you're automatically a citizen. Well, not necessarily, because if you read that ruling carefully, it says more than that. It says it's because he was born on American soil and allegiance was satisfied because his parents at the time of his birth were permanent residents. Now, why is that key? The argument now becomes the citizenship clause in the 14th Amendment. And the citizenship clause in the 14th Amendment, once again, while I could probably quote it, I'm going to go there just in case I don't mess up on any of the words here. All persons born or naturalized in the United States, and, important word, and means there's a second requirement, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. What the judicial ruling says is because his parents were green card holders or permanent residents at the time of his birth, that satisfied that second part, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, the congressman that wrote that clause, because you got to realize the 14th Amendment and all of the Constitution, all the amendments in the original 7 articles, was written in committee. They didn't just sit there and write it.
Right.
So during the convention, for example, a guy named Gouverneur Morris had a committee, and they were tasked with writing the preamble. And then you had other people who were tasked with writing the legislative and the so on and so forth. And then they would all come together in the body, and they would debate it, and they'd make changes, and then they could go back to committee and back and forth and all that jazz. That's the way it's written. The guys that were in charge of the committee to write the citizenship clause was Senator Jacob Howard, I believe, of Michigan, and Senator Trumbull, I believe, who was Illinois. And so once again, they wrote it, and it just didn't just get accepted. It had to be debated on the floor. So they gave testimony before Congress, and we have all of the records of this. It's called the Congressional Globe, if you want to look it up, the congressional records of the time. What did they say they meant? Because they were asked, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by subject to the jurisdiction thereof? And do you mean, and today's legal eagles will tell you this is what it means. Do you mean within the borders and subject to the laws? And that's what today they'll say that means. And on May 30th, 1866, Senator Jacob Howard says, no, we mean more than that. We mean full jurisdiction, meaning full allegiance. Full allegiance. And then he goes on to explain. Now, what we're talking about is these aren't people that can't become citizens. You go through the process, you can. These are people that are not automatically citizens.
Right.
For example, Indians not taxed. Indians not taxed, they're still a part of their tribe. Now, they can apply, but just because they're on American soil, they're not automatically citizens. Or at least, well, they are now, but that's right, because of laws and stuff. But at the time. Then he goes on to say, and the children of, this is key because it's brings up Kamala Harris, and the children of foreigners, aliens, ambassadors, diplomats, and other government consuls and ministers. So children of persons who have not shown some type of allegiance to America are not automatically citizens if they're born on the soils. What are you saying? Did you catch that, folks? Right. Anchor babies are not citizens.
Right. They don't like to hear that.
Now we get back to Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
She's already not a natural born citizen because both of her parents were not citizens at the time of her birth.
Right.
But on top of that, they were visitors. They were here on student visas. They had shown at the time no intent to become immigrants, to go through that process, to become a permanent resident or a citizen or anything of that nature. They were simply here on student visas. So while she was born in Oakland, her parents were not citizens, not natural born citizen, nor had they no allegiance to this country. Therefore, based on the congressional testimony in 1866, she's not even a citizen. So not only is she not eligible for office, she should be deported.
Yes. That's what I tell people.
Yeah, I tell people that I get standing ovations, by the way.
Oh my gosh, you're lucky you, because people are like, oh my gosh, yes, she is. You're just bringing this up again. And they'll be MAGA people. I'm like, whatever, I'm going to.
Yeah.
It's the truth.
Well, 99% of the people, and I'm not exaggerating when I say 99% go, well, was she born here?
Right.
But then there's those who say, okay, I want to know a little bit deeper. And where I appreciate people is when they say, okay, I believe that she was born here. That's good enough. But let's hear what you got to say. I'll take it into consideration. That's all I'm asking. Take it into consideration. I've got the evidence here. And it's not just Vattel's Law of Nations when it comes to natural born citizen to satisfy that definition. That definition of both parents needing to be citizens at the time of birth. We can go back to natural born subject. This is an old English thing. Required both citizens, both parents to be British subjects, and it was for the purpose of estates and inheritance. You can go back to Greece. To be a natural born citizen of ancient Greece, you need to have citizen parents. And once again, it was back then it was typically for inheritance. Then you've got the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1790, which defines a natural born citizen as being the child of citizen parents, plural. And then six times, the Supreme Court has used that definition as dicta. Dicta is when something is used that is not necessarily directly related to the case, but it's a legal concept or idea. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the most recent case that used it, Minor versus Happersett, 1875. And it was actually an inheritance case, a young lady and her brothers. And her brothers were getting the inheritance. They're saying, well, you're a female. You don't get any part of this. She says, no, I'm one of the kids too. I get part of the inheritance as well. So she actually sued her brothers. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. What was his name? Morrison Waite. Chief Justice Morrison Waite was the one who gave the opinion afterwards. And she won the case, by the way. And he explains in his judicial opinion, she, like her brothers, is a natural born citizen because she is the child of two citizen parents. So why would she not get the inheritance any different than her brothers? Right. So he used the proper definition. And that's the sixth time in history that the Supreme Court, and specifically the Chief Justice of the United States, used the proper definition. So for those people out there say, well, what does the court say? Well, there's never been a court ruling on the definition of natural born citizen, but there has been 6 cases of dicta in which it has been accurately used. Now, that brings us back to my lawsuit. Yes. It was an attempt to have the courts codify that definition. So we sued Kamala Harris, however you want to say her name.
Whatever, I know.
I got other names I'd like to call her, but it's not.
I know, me too.
But anyway, so we filed this lawsuit, and it went to the district. We filed in the district court in San Diego, Southern District, Federal District Court, and they dismissed it after about a year. They dismissed it, saying that it is not that we cannot bring it up because it forms what's called a political question, meaning that we're setting the courts against Congress and can't do that because they argued it is up to Congress to determine eligibility. Now, there is something constitutionally called the enumeration doctrine. And what that means is in order for the federal government or any part of the federal government to have a power, it must be authorized by the Constitution. It needs to be listed or enumerated in the Constitution, expressly enumerated. And the enumeration doctrine. And nowhere in the Constitution is the power to determine that eligibility given to Congress. Now, the 10th Amendment, which for those of you who are constitutionalists, you'll probably be able to recite the 10th Amendment. But for those of you who aren't, let's read it. 10th Amendment, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectfully or to the people. What that's saying is powers are delegated to the federal government. If they're not delegated, in other words, the federal government doesn't have that power because it's not delegated, goes back to that numeration doctrine thing, and it's not prohibited to the states. Article 1, Section 10 is a whole list of things the states are not allowed to do. That's what it's referring to. Then it belongs to the states or to the people. Here we are, people.
Right.
We made the lawsuit because the states didn't do their job, and it says or to the people. States didn't do their job. Now it's our turn, so we filed the lawsuit. And that's what I responded with when we appealed to the Ninth Circuit, saying the federal government, that Congress has no authority over the eligibility, determine eligibility. It is the states and the people, and therefore the reason for dismissal was wrong. The Ninth Circuit then reviewed the case. They stuck with the original argument, saying, no, political question. Congress has the authority, and they added something, and you don't have standing. Well, actually, we did, and here's why. Myself, a gentleman named George Rombach, Dennis Jackson, we're the three main officers of the Constitution Association nonprofit, and 24 other people that wanted to be added to the case. So it's Constitution Association et al., means and others. But the primary complainant is the Constitution Association. Constitution Association, nonprofit. And we can, because of her actions, tangibly show cost of volunteer hours, cost of dollars, and all of that, chasing this. Therefore, there is an injury. When it comes to standing, for those of you who don't know what standing is, it's like a three-legged stool. There has to be injury. The person being gone after has to be connected to that injury somehow. And then that injury can be either partially or fully resolved if you win the case. Those three things must be in place for there to be standing. And all three are in place with the Constitution Association. They can argue that the individuals don't have injury, but the Constitution Association tangibly can show money spent, hours spent, so on and so forth. So we do have standing. So now we've got the Ninth Circuit telling us that Congress has the power to determine eligibility, which it doesn't. I went over that, and that we don't have standing, which because of the Constitution Association, we did. So then we decided to file a writ of certiorari to the United States Supreme Court. Now, a writ of certiorari is not an appeal. It's a different instrument. We're basically requesting, because when it comes to the Supreme Court, you don't just, hey, man, now it's your turn. Supreme Court, you got to be, very respectful and go through these certain processes and make sure you have a certain number of pages. It's almost ridiculous. But anyway, and so the writ of certiorari is basically a request for them to review whether or not they will be willing to review in order to take it. All right. And so we filed that writ of certiorari about a year and a half ago to the United States Supreme Court, and we have not gotten anything back. Now, we have sent 2 written requests requesting status. So once again, it's the Supreme Court, so you don't rattle their cage, but we did send 2 requests, never got a response. What I've been saying over the last few months is I almost fear that our case is sort of like that crate at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark going into that giant warehouse, somewhere and being forgotten. That's what I kind of feel like is happening with the case. But now that Kamala Harris is the presidential nomination for the Democrats, and now it's official because because the party wants to protect democracy, used non-democratic methods. I crack up about that.
I know, right?
And we're not even supposed to be a democracy, and we're Republic. I know. That's a different story. Yeah. I've got a book about it. I'll tell you in a sec. But the thing is, now suddenly interest in our case is rising. Supreme Court, though, will not respond. So now the question is, what do we do? Do we rattle their cage? Do we try to get more media attention? Do we file something new? I mean, Jack Smith did. Maybe we can just change the words a little. I don't know. But that's kind of where we're at right now with this case. And there is one other person. We're not the only ones. There's one other person that has made a big deal about her not being eligible. He takes it from a slightly different angle, but he's right, and I've met him like twice. I doubt he remembers me. American Freedom Alliance, I met him through, which I'm a fellow for. And this is John Eastman. John Eastman, if you know the story, represented Trump, worked with Trump, and then California took his bar. He's no longer on the bar in California. He's still able to practice law elsewhere. Then I think was it Chapman College? Is it they that let him go as a professor? I mean, because they just attacked him because he's associated with Trump. But anyway, about 4 months before we filed our case, he had written an article about her not being eligible. We actually referenced that article in our case. It's funny because our case, we tried to actually file it a month before he wrote that article, but dealing with the federal courts was such a pain, it took until December to get it in. But anyway, and so one of the things I'm trying to do, and if any of your viewers, listeners out there can help with this, let me know at constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com is my public email, constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com. If you are in contact with John Eastman, because we're trying to get in connection with him, because if we can't do it on our own, and he can't do it on our own, let's combine forces.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
well, and what about people even sending letters of support? I don't really know what that would, but like the Brunson brothers, we're having people do that. So, I mean, is there something like that?
Oh, absolutely. You can do that, but don't send it to me.
Right.
People who can get the word out say, hey, we need to talk to this guy. What case is this? We need to know more. Send it to those people. I've been trying to get into the more major media for 2.5 years with this case. 3 years really with this case. And I have met obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. I've had a handful of larger podcasters talk to me about it, like Scott McKay and you and a few others. But the bigger names out there, the Steve Bannons and the Hannitys and the Mark Levins,
Tucker.
Tucker. Yeah, their screeners don't get it to them, or they just decide they don't want to touch it. I don't know. But, and matter of fact, I thought I might have an in with Steve Bannon because one of my students was friends with one of his production people. And so we sent the information through her, and then we just never got a response. And that's the second time I've tried to get hold of Steve Bannon. When they subpoenaed him and then arrested him for not answering to that subpoena, that was also unconstitutional. Subpoena is a court instrument. And so unless it was issued by the courts, it is not binding, but that's beside the point.
Right.
So right now, I think the best thing to do with this case is to get eyeballs on it.
Yes.
And that's what I'm trying to do. That's one of the reasons why I was jazzed when you contacted me and say, hey, let's talk about this.
Yes.
I need to get eyeballs so people go, hey, where's that case? Why is it not being looked at? Let's put the pressure on.
Well, and I wonder if part of it is that people don't understand it fully. So they're just like, oh, that's just, a bunch of propaganda. And it's like, no, if you really understood, you would be like, let's do this. Well, that's why it's surprising.
Yeah, the first reaction is, oh, a bunch of birthers. She was born in American soil.
Yes.
End of conversation.
Yeah.
And that's the way the left works. They've got their answer. Boom, end of conversation. No need to talk about it. Goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
And our allies fall for that and even use that. It's she's born in the soil. Yes. First words out of everybody's mouth.
Mm-hmm. And or they'll say, like, they'll even say that her parents were citizens. And I'm like, they became, but they were not.
At the time,
so
right.
There's a difference.
Well, and they were students. And let's do a little exercise here, for example, to help people understand. They were students, meaning they were visitors. If you were on vacation, and let's say in this hypothetical situation, you're married and you're pregnant and you have a child, let's say in Australia while you're on vacation, is that kid automatically an Australian? No. Your allegiance as the parent is to America, so that kid is an American. If you were a diplomat to France, or let's say you were French and you and your husband were here in America, and yet the French embassy in Washington, D.C. had a kid in Annapolis, is that kid an American? No. Because the allegiance would be to France, or we just keep on going with military members or whatever. If you're not born on the soil of your home country, but your parents' allegiance is to that home country, that's the country as a child you're the citizen of. So how is it the two students who are just visiting on student visas have a kid in America and that kid's automatically an American? And according to Jamaican law, the citizenship goes with the father. So technically she should be deported to Jamaica, just saying. Right. According to their law. So, but we've so twisted what was originally intended, and now goes back all the way back to why I was talking about the Tories. Why was that intended? Why did they do that? Because they didn't want the foreign influence. What do
Right.
we have with people like Kamala and Obama? Foreign influence, foreign ideas. When I say foreign ideas, I don't mean other country. I mean like socialism, foreign
Yes.
ideas that are coming in through these people who are not natural born citizens. They're not second generation Americans. They're not people who were raised by citizens who love this country and wanted them to learn what's best for this country, not what's best for some other ideology or other idea somewhere else.
Right. Right. And that's what's so scary, because I think about this invasion, right? And it's like, that's just leaving the door. So then and they call them Americans. Oh, they're Americans once they step foot on American soil. Okay. So I went into Mexico and became a Mexican. It was pretty cool. Because that's what happens these days. I'm just kidding. But, it's just so like ridiculous to think then that would mean that all of these people that have come across can have their baby and all of a sudden become president. That was not the intention, like you've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, then, yes, you have foreign influence. And I believe it's intentional. I don't think that this
Sure
is
it
by
is.
chance that they're like hiding this and not wanting to, because if these people that like even in the Supreme Court or any of the courts for that matter, if they were doing the right thing, they would be like, oh my gosh, we got to protect America. But instead, it's like, this is how you take over a country.
Well, it's a part of the scheme to destroy sovereignty and to destroy what America. Remember, this is an old
Right.
war. The old world hated the American system day one.
Right.
This is nothing new. This is the old world, those old kings, those old monarchies that have changed faces, changed logos, and changed names, but it's the same people.
Right.
And they want to destroy what America created. And one of the ways to do it is to destroy our sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
And also get inside the halls. And it's like I tell people, people say, well, or Lincoln has a quote about us being taken over from within. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like I tell people, the enemy's not just at the gate. They've got the gate clicker and they're walking the halls of government.
That's right.
And we're sitting here going, gosh, what do we do? And then people like me try to do something, and it winds up, like I said earlier, like that crate at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Oh, that's dangerous. We'll just stick it over here and forget about it and not let it be heard.
Well, like when you think about it, it's like what's dangerous is the fact that this is actually happening, not that it's being exposed. So you can see where their allegiance lies.
Right.
It's not with America.
Well, and it shows you how deep their tendrils are into our system. The enemy isn't just walking the halls of Congress. They're walking the halls of our judicial system. They're walking the halls of academia. They're walking the halls of the entertainment system and the media and so on and so forth. And they have such an entrenched grip that it's like trying to play a football game at the other team's stadium with referees hired by the other team, with the other team's crowd and the sportscasters and the guy in the booth for rooting for the other team, and them changing the rules as you play. Oh, first down, we just changed the rules 5 seconds ago. It now takes 15 yards. I mean, that's what they're doing. Now, I don't want to be pessimistic though. I'm an optimistic guy. I don't believe it's the end. We've seen worse actually in this country before. I mean, think about it for a second. When it came to World War II, for example, the number of people dying per day was 10 times the number of people who died on 9/11 per day. And then on top of that, we were in the middle of a Great Depression, and our president was a lapdog for Stalin. And the New Deal, well, the raw deal was communism in play in our country. It's been worse. And we can get beyond this. But here's the thing that frustrates me is Americans have always been doers, but we're not doing. We're complaining, we're noticing, we're praying, but we're not doing. And for those of us who are doing, we really do feel like we're out there alone. We're not getting that support and we're not getting that help. And, and I was just reading about Jack Hibbs talking the other day about how our pastors are giving in to this culture. They're not standing up as the stalwarts of morality and our culture. And as Christians, we're not standing with them. We don't have any leadership, and we're not taking the leadership role. There was a stat that Ted Cruz used, and I looked it up, and it turned out to be accurate not only nationally, but also in California. About half of Christians eligible to vote are registered to vote, and about half of them actually vote. So that means 1 in 4 Christians are voting. Now, California, just as an example, if you were to get all of the Christians voting, even with all the cheating, it would overwhelm the cheat. If you had every Christian voting their values, it would flip California in a day.
Right.
But we're sitting there going, well, I'm just going to pray and wait for the Lord to return and put some legs on those prayers, my friends. We are at war, and we need to fight that war. And we haven't been. And I mean, there's a lot of different projects I'm working on. That's just that lawsuit, just one of many. I mean, another one I'm trying to is with the state of Utah. I'm talking to legislators there to defy the 17th Amendment and Reynolds v. Sims, get us back to being a republic. If you know anything about 17th Amendment, there's a lot of projects, and sometimes I feel alone, and we need to be working together. And I know I'm preaching to the choir on this one, because I know you probably have a very active audience, and most of the people who talk to me do, but we need to get more people active. We need to be sharing, share this video, with people who would never have even thought about watching this.
I know. I mean, and I think this is really going to open up people's eyes, because it's like, I don't know. And that's the thing. It's a lot of MAGA people too that are like, no, this is just not. And I'm thinking, well, just open up your mind a little bit. You know what I mean? We've been told these things. It's this way for a reason. Like, they don't want us to be privy to what's actually so that they can pull wool over the people's eyes and continue to do the destruction that they're doing. But it's when
there's fear too.
Yeah.
So, and I hear it all the time. Well, yeah, but Doug, I'm afraid of the backlash, or, my neighbors might not talk to me. Who cares? You're trying to save the country here.
Right.
Disassociate with those who are lost. Try to talk to those who are low-hanging fruit, and get together with fellowship with those who are like-minded, and let's get this taken care of.
Right. I mean, because it's a lot easier to do than people think. Do you know what I mean? Even just it's bringing the truth to the people. That's why I'm like, I don't care if a bunch of people want to unfriend me or whatever, like, that's fine. But I'm trying to bring you something that is valid, but you just don't want to accept it. And so a lot of that starts with us accepting these atrocities that are happening around us so that we can stop them. If we don't acknowledge it, then we're just perpetuating the problem by going like, no, that's not so. And it's like, yes, it is. We need to be standing in truth, unafraid of it. Because it's more fearful to see where this leads than actually exposing it and saying, like, not today. We're not going to allow this. And, I would say my audience, I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like people aren't as active as they should be anyway, across the board. And,
let's be aware of something. The template they're using is invasion. Let's think about that word for a second. They have invaded the halls of Congress. They are working to invade the presidency, and they have people invading this country, walking across the border, and they are opening the border so we can be invaded. Why? Because they want to destroy what the founding fathers established. And the way to do it is same way Rome fell with the barbarians shown. Of course, Rome had rotted from within. The barbarians really put a dying system out of its misery. Well, that's what we're doing. We're dying from within, and now we're inviting the barbarians. And yes, I'm calling illegal aliens who are not here to assimilate and be a productive member of the society barbarians, because that's what they are. And so we have an invasion going on politically and physically in this country, and they're doing everything they can to make sure that invasion is in place. And the founding fathers understood this stuff. That's the reason they have natural born citizen. That's why they gave the federal government the authority to, as it says in Article 1, Section 9, the ability to prohibit persons from migrating into this country. They have that authority. And, the day Biden took office, he reversed all of Trump's immigration executive orders that were based on existing law, and the law is good. And then Biden gets up there and says, well, I'm waiting for Congress to pass a law. The laws are there. Enforce them.
Right. And that's the thing. I feel like everyone's kind of saying, well, it's out of my hands, kind of a thing. I can't do anything about it. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm sick of it. But like, that's where I want people to see that it's all intentional. It's not like, oh, this is just by chance this is happening, and it's been going on since the beginning of, America. I mean, that's what it's been, such a fight to keep what we have. And I feel it's like, you would think more people would want to fight to preserve that. But I think in their, it's our ignorance that doesn't allow us to go like, okay, well, look, this is actually something that would help do that. You just have to accept that that's reality and understand that this is, but I don't think people want to believe too that everything is intentional. Do you know what I mean? They just think,
Yeah.
oh, it's just by chance. Like this is just a coincidence.
Well, they've been taught, other
Right.
things like the birthright citizenship. Well, it's born
Right.
on American soil. They've been taught this, and so they believe it. And then the ones who think that there might be a problem, then they do the three monkey thing. They get their hands over their ears and their eyes and their mouth.
Yes. That's right.
And and then the few of us that are out there fighting, well, that's a conspiracy theorist, and that person's dangerous, and that's a J6er, and da 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 da.
Mhm.
And suddenly you've got this, this affront against us, frontal assault against us, and everybody goes, oh, now I'm scared too. I don't want to be that person.
Right.
We are playing into their hands. We are doing exactly what they want us to do by being too fearful to fight back. And when it comes to biblical ideas, understand that it is for us to make sure our worldview is spread. It is for us to conform to the gospel, not for the gospel to conform to the world. And that is the message we need to make sure is out there. And as Christians, goes back to what I said earlier about the sin of omission. Knowing what I know to do nothing would be the sin of omission.
Right.
You have been equipped. You have been now. I have armed you with knowledge. You're a very dangerous person now. I've armed you with some knowledge. Sin of omission. If you don't do something about it, you know the truth, my friends out there.
And that's why it's time to do something about it. And that is a sin. And it's sad because, like I said, it's so easy and it's something that isn't, even that hard. But again, it starts with acceptance and then, kind of sharing it with others. That's why I think this does need to be all over the place. Like, I'm surprised that it's not, but it's, again, the fear of people not wanting to go there because, oh, I'm going to lose something. Well, you're going to lose everything if we don't do something about it.
Yeah,
that's
why it's one of the subjects the media won't talk about. You and I had a mutual friend, Don Dix, and Don Dix, when he was on 590 AM in Riverside, conservative station that carried Rush, and he told me there was a list of things he was not allowed to talk about. And guess what? Natural born citizen was one of them.
Really? Wow. And that's interesting. And in that you would want to go, okay, well then why are you still there? You should step outside of that instead of allowing yourself to be silenced, because where does that get you?
Well, and that's where I try to differ. I try to play this game the way I can to make sure I can educate, because that's really where the Lord put me on this earth, is to educate. And so Don Dixon, God bless him, loved him, good friend, and he began by buying airtime for the Inland Empire Unite IE group for a Saturday show. He was so good that what happened was 590 AM hired him for a show during the week. But when they hire you, you are now suspect to their rules. You have to follow what they want you to say. But if you're buying airtime, you say it's your show. Right. Now, they can always say bye-bye, but you'll find another independent station that wants the money. And that's what I do. So I'm on KMET in Riverside County on Saturdays from 1 to 3, and I'm on KPRZ right there in San Diego County, the Christian station, on Saturday nights at 9 p.m. And I pay the airtime, and I say what I want to say. And as long as I'm not making the FCC mad, Salem Media, which owns KPRZ, KMET, which is an independent station, they're happy with it. And that's why I buy my airtime. Well, people say, well, why don't you try to get higher? But no, because I don't want to be limited in what I say. So I buy my airtime, and a portion of it comes out of my own pocket, because I only have so many advertisers, so many donors. I run in the red every year because of what I'm trying to do. But it's worth it, because our country is worth it. Liberty and truth is worth it. So I'm on the radio. I do podcasts. I shows like yours. I'm on the radio every once in a while. I've been on Fox like 5 times and One American News a couple times. And NPR one time even came and interviewed me. And I was surprised they didn't Katie Couric edit it later. But so I'm doing everything I can to educate. And I am trying to do things. Like I said, I'm in touch with some legislators in Oregon and Utah right now on different issues. And and I was with one in California, but that person has since termed out, and now I'm trying to get another in California. But I travel with events. Last year I was in Washington, D.C. and Michigan. I spoke at the a Republican state convention in Michigan last year, which was very cool. But these things take money, and so once again, this gets back to how can you help? And I remember one time I was talking to a class in Fallbrook, there in San Diego County. And this guy walks up to me afterwards. And he says, Doug, man, you've lit a fire under my bottom. I want to get involved. I want to do something, but I'm not a speaker. I'm not a door knocker. I'm not a phone caller. I don't know what to do. And I said, well, can you stuff envelopes? Because there are candidates out there that need that too. It doesn't matter what it is. Do something. And if you can't do something, then help fund something or do both.
Right.
You know, I've run for office twice. I used to be a regular at the Murrieta City Council meetings. I used to love it because I had like one ally on the city council. And so you and I have this in common. You and I have this common. When I would walk in, that means that 4 of them would go, oh,
yes.
Right? You know exactly what I'm talking about.
They're rubbing their face and their head. They're just, oh my gosh. It's great.
Here again. What are we going to do?
I know.
Yeah, no, I've experienced the same. But see, they need to know who you are.
Right.
That's the kind of impact, because you know what? You know what's wonderful about the left? When they're nervous and afraid, they obey and act a little bit more decent.
They do.
It's amazing. When they're nervous, when they think you've got an impact and you can start a movement that will remove them from their seat, they will at least listen. We do have more influence than we think we do. And then eventually we would like to throw them out. I've got a shirt that's out there. Haven't gotten it in my store yet, but I will hopefully in the next few weeks. It's one of my sayings. We complain about the cockroaches in Washington, but we breed them locally. Stop breeding them. And it's got a capital with cockroaches crawling all over on the shirt. But and then that's my message to you. It begins locally. You can't do something nationally? No problem. Go to your water board meeting. Go to your city council meeting. Go to your school board meeting. Go to your HOA meetings. Those are crazy too. But get the right people in there, or at least influence the people in the right direction. It is so important that we are involved, because it's one voice is great. But you have a million voices. You have more than that all at once. It's like it's like the ants, you know, all over a corpse of an animal, you know, and man, that thing's gone, you know, quickly when they all work together. We need to all work together. We need to be those ants where we just devour the enemy and replace them ultimately. That's what we need to do. But we got to do it in mass. We have to this. You know, Audra, I love you. I love what you do. I appreciate you. And I appreciate all the other people out there. But we need help. We need more people.
Yes. I know. And that's why I've been saying it's weird, because I feel like COVID, it was like everybody was gung-ho. Then they kind of went back to sleep. And I'm like, this continues. Like, we have to keep doing it. And it does make a difference, because they'll say, well, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm not seeing a change quick enough. I'm like, that's because you want it on your time. But it's a persistence. It's the always showing up. You know, and the reason why things are the way they are is because we haven't been showing up, because we've like vacated the seat that we're supposed to be in, which is the throne, and they've taken over. Of course, the seat's vacant. They're like, oh my gosh, now they've inverted everything, and they think that they tell us what to do. And that's why they're so scared of the people, because they know how powerful we are. We just have to exercise it. And it isn't that hard.
Yeah, well, and my Constitution class just kind of shows that tendency. When Obama was president, my Constitution classes, I had 2 at the time, and the one in Temecula at one point had 50 people showing up because they were nervous.
Right.
Once Trump became president, my classes, I was lucky if I got 3 people. Then when Biden was elected, the numbers jumped to 20 and 30 per class, and I wound up with like 7 classes all over the Southern California. My point is this: people get nervous, suddenly they show up. And then when they think it's okay, now I sit. No, that's when you really need to be fighting, because you need to make sure it doesn't go back to where it was.
That's right. To preserve what you just did.
Everybody's buying guns when they think their gun rights are at threat.
Right.
You know, for example, the joke is that Obama and Biden deserve the salesman of the century for gun sales, because every time they threaten to take guns, gun sales go up. Why is that the only time we're nervous?
Right.
We should always be on guard. Even during peacetime, even when we think we have our guy in office, we need to be on guard, because the enemy never rests. It's like the Terminator, you know, it never rests. Has no mercy, never stops until either you're dead or it has stopped. And the thing is, it's like the current under a boat, though. It never gives up. It never stops. You need to row against that current constantly. Otherwise, that current is going to send you right over the falls, because that's what they want to do. They want to destroy us by sending us over the falls. And then when we say, hey, I hear a roar of the falls, and they say, oh, well, that's hope and change. That's, you know, a better future. That's moving America forward. But we know it's our destruction. And we sit there and we just let the current move us in that direction.
It's like
We
being a
need we
deer in
need to row
headlights.
against it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way you put that. And it's, you know, I think, I mean, and people do get lazy, especially if somebody's in there that they like say Trump. And it's like, but he's not going to affect your local area, your local community. You still have to be the one that is holding the line, because even if you have somebody in there that you like, you still need to make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing. Because if you're not present, they could still, you know, go off, you know, ship and, you know, go in some other direction that you weren't expecting. And there's always, you know, influence coming in for them. So I mean, even if there's some on the board here, like, they still do things that I'm like, why'd you make that decision? Like, you'll stand firm on this, okay, cool, but then you're not over here. So it's still our duty to make sure that those people are doing what they should be doing and not allowing this to take place, because what we're doing is we allow it, and then people want to complain about it and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Well, then why are you allowing it? Well, I mean, I didn't have a choice. I mean, they're the ones that are doing it. And in that, they can have a scapegoat to say that, well, it's their fault. It's not mine. I didn't do anything. And it's like, but it's your unwillingness to do something that leaves you to be the person to blame.
Well, there's a reason for that unwillingness, and this is kind of where I knew we were going to eventually get to. And I know there's people out there right now asking themselves, "Is okay, Doug, you got me, you convinced me. What's the process? What do I do then?" The first thing you do is you've got to know. You've got to know. So you educate yourself, and don't tell me, well, there's no time for education. Then you know, hey, we fight the good fight and we win this country back. Do you know what to replace the problem with? We have to know what it's supposed to be. And this is the reason why I teach the Constitution. So my first recommendation to you out there who says, okay, I want to get involved. Yes, do what you can. Money for who you support, and, you know, support candidates, envelopes on, but also make a concerted effort to know. And that doesn't mean just reading politics and reading, you know, whatever website you, American Thinker or whatever you think is on target, but get to know the Constitution, get to know the way it's supposed to operate. And that begins with getting one of those pocket constitutions and reading it. And then when you have questions, you find someone like me and you ask those questions. I've got books out there. You know, I can answer all that. We're a republic, not a democracy, but do you really know what that means? I wrote a whole book about it called Repeal Democracy. So you look me up, Douglas V. Gibbs, Repeal Democracy. Right now it's for sale on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Next few weeks I should have it on my own store. But nonetheless, that's where it begins. Education. You're not going to know there's a problem unless you know there's a problem. You need to be educated. You can feel, well, gosh, something's not right. It's unconstitutional. Well, how is it unconstitutional? Well, I don't know.
Right.
You need to know this, because the enemy, one of the ways that they put fear into us is they stump us. They do the gotchas. If they can't gotcha, and you can respond and say, well, actually, in Article 4, Section 4, it says that the United States shall guarantee to every state a Republican form of government. We're not a democracy. We're a republic, and we're supposed to be guaranteed a republic. And then they have to step back. Whoa, I'm dealing with something here.
Right.
When they start saying, well, communism works fine because, you know, everybody's working together, you know, and all the business. Okay, then who innovates?
Yeah.
Because now there's no incentive. So who innovates?
Right.
Everything starts going downward from there. But see, you have to have responses like, I know, well, immigration, Doug, you know, I don't know how to explain it. Steal this from me. Do you lock your door? Why do you lock your door? Because, you know, outside, while you don't hate everybody on the outside of your house, there are criminals that want to break into your home. So you lock your door. And even when you're home, you don't throw it open and let anybody in. You look out the little hole, or you creak the door, or you yell through the door, who is it? You vet them before they come in. Why would our country be any different? See, that's a good response. The average person goes, I never thought about it that way. Steal it, please, for your argument on immigration. But that's what being educated and understanding all of this stuff does for you. It gives you the ability to A, debate back, and B, the answers, the ways to fix it start to appear, because now you know the way it's supposed to be. Educate yourself, get to know your Constitution, and continue to listen to people like Audra or myself or all the other people out there that you know are on the right track. Spend time listening to them, do your own studies, get into the Constitution, get into the Declaration of Independence, and then do what you can along the way. That's where it starts. It begins with education. I encourage all of you to get educated about the Constitution. Once again, you want to know more about it, I write articles at douglasvgibbs.com. I have my radio programs. I'm doing videos with every Tuesday. I'm on a video, and I have another one I'm doing with a guy named War Hamster, which I'm sure you're familiar with. War
Yes.
Hamster.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
Brady. Yeah, Brady.
Brady's the
He,
best.
he and I, matter of fact, we've done I think 11 or 12 videos called the Refederalist Report. So at his rumble.com/warhamster, you can find it. Just look for the Refederalist ones. That's the ones we did together. We did the 17th Amendment last week. We're talking about Reynolds v. Sims this week, which is how the state Senate what used to be designed. One senator per county. Would your state Senate look different if it was one per county? Why did that change? We need to get it back. It's one of the reasons why I'm talking to Utah, try to get them to go back to that, to defy it, because they're one of the states that was so against it when it happened in 1964. It's not even that long ago. Right. But so I encourage you, listeners, viewers, to learn and learn and learn, and then apply what you learn and put some legs on those prayers. Pray about it, but put some legs on those prayers. I encourage you to do that, and then put out support. One of the ways that you can help me out, and because I know we're getting to the end here, and I'm going to plug it real quick if you don't mind.
Please, please. I was going to ask you to. Yeah.
Go to DouglasVGibbs.com. Matter of fact, it's right there on your screen. DouglasVGibbs.com. The V stands for victory. DouglasVGibbs.com. And then I've got the blog there. You can hit that, videos. But on the far right of my link bar says join. You can be a $9 a month supporter to help fund what I do. Right now, I don't have anything exclusionary for members. Down the road, we are going to do that, where there'll be exclusive benefits for those who are doing $9 a month. But $9 a month helps fund what I do. Right now, for example, the radio shows, I have 2 advertisers for 2 radio shows, and it's not enough. Right. And usually, it used to be my Constitution classes of Southern California that paid for them. I am now living on the Oregon coast. I just moved 6 weeks ago. And so the classes are gone. That income's gone. $9 a month. You help fund that. You help get me to Utah. You help get me to, I'm supposed to be in Minnesota on September 27th. Things like that. That helps. Douglas V. Gibbs. If you want to know how can I help, DouglasVGibbs.com. Hit the join link. Become a $9 a month patron. And buy my books. I've got 10 of them out there right now. My most recent is part 1 of U.S. history from the Saxons, the election of Thomas Jefferson. Part 2 should be out any day now. Part 3 after that. And then I've also got other books I'm working on. One is a book of presidents, and one is going to be called Restore the Republic, which gets into more of how to restore it. So keep an eye out for my books as well. Audra, thank you so much. You are so awesome. I when you got a hold of me and asked me beyond, my heart leapt with joy. Seriously, I so appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you and everything you do. And just, it's so important to, be doing what you're doing. And we all have a different capacity of what that is. Like you're saying, you don't have to do everything that I do. You don't have to do everything you do, but in some way do something. And if that is a support or whatever, but I think even just empowering ourselves with the knowledge is so important. And that's why it's important for us to be sharing stuff like this and doing what we do so that we can open up the eyes of the people. And we have to be, active in that. It's like our inactivity allows all of this, tyranny to just kind of come in and take over our realm. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I'm just so thankful that you're here. I look forward to, you're going to have to come back. Because
and for those of you who want to read my original complaint about the Kamala Harris not being eligible, I'm going to put a link to the original lawsuit complaint on my site right after I'm done here. So go to DouglasVGibbs.com and go to the blog, and the most recent post will be that.
Awesome. And I'll put that in the links to the show. And, I'm just so thankful for you to come and share this with our audience, because it's been weighing on my heart. I'm like, I got to call Doug, because this is the only way I can't convince him. And I even put up your lawsuit. Like, I was like, look, read this. And they're just like, no, that's not what it says. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll show you. We'll have him come on and he'll tell you, because then maybe you'll believe it, So, if anybody knows where John Eastman is or how to get in touch with him, let's hook that up.
Let's connect us.
Yeah, it's because
I think it'd be a great combined force. I really do.
That's right. Amen. All right. Well, thank you so much, Doug. Thank you guys for joining us. I hope that enlightened you and gave you some information you may not have wanted to hear, but you needed to hear. And so I'm so glad that Doug was here to do that. God bless everybody. Join me next time where I bring you more truth, love, light, and all of the good things.